There's a reason some pieces of ancient timber have survived longer than entire civilizations. Historians walk into a stave church in Norway, a Roman pier foundation, or a centuries-old granary and find wood that looks like it shouldn't exist anymore. Rain, frost, insects, bacteria, none of it won the battle. And the fascinating part is that the people who protected that wood didn't have plastic sealants, power sprayers, or chemical preservatives. They relied on a method so simple, so brutally effective, and so enduring that it still works today if you're willing to put in a small amount of hands-on effort. This wasn't a hack. It was a philosophy of respecting natural materials and understanding how they behave under stress. And that is what we're diving into. The ancient method of heat-treating wood, the technique that makes timber rot-proof for generations. Now, how did ancient craftsmen stumble upon the rot-proofing power of heat? Well, long before the rise of modern chemistry, these builders learned something absolutely crucial just by observing their own fire pits and charcoal racks. They noticed, you see, that the wood closest to the flame simply never rotted. It never attracted the same pests, and interestingly, it resisted moisture far better than anything left in its raw state. Across multiple civilizations, from the Vikings to the Japanese to early Slavic carpenters, this became, well, foundational knowledge. Controlled charring actually changes the chemistry of the wood itself by removing the sugars that fungi and insects feed on. So you're not just adding a coating, you're transforming the material from the inside out. When Vikings burned the ends of their foundation posts, they weren't decorating them. They were, in fact, sealing out an entire world of rot organisms without ever needing a brush, a bucket, or a single drop of store-bought sealant. Why heat-treated wood lasts centuries while modern treated lumber fails within decades? Modern pressure-treated lumber relies on chemical saturation, which works, but, it actually breaks down faster than most people realize. Moisture still penetrates. Ultraviolet rays, well, they break down the fibers, and fungi, eventually, they adapt. But heat-treating wood, on the other hand, alters the structure permanently. The outer layer actually becomes hydrophobic, and internal moisture movement stabilizes. And the sugars that pests love are, quite simply, baked away, leaving the surface unappealing to termites, carpenter ants, and bacteria. This is why heat-treated beams from medieval buildings remarkably still survive, while many modern deck boards need replacement every 10 to 15 years. The ancient craftsmen didn't just treat wood, they, in a sense, weaponized it against decay. So, how the method works and why it's surprisingly simple to replicate. The process requires, well, patience and restraint more than technology. First, you need to choose your wood. Softwoods, like pine, spruce and fir, they actually react beautifully to heat. Hardwoods can be treated as well, but they do require more time. The goal here isn't to burn the wood into charcoal, no. The real aim is to allow the outer layer to darken slowly and evenly, so the cellulose structure tightens and seals. Medieval builders, interestingly enough, used embers rather than open flame. They would hold the wood above the coals, rotating it until the surface turned a uniform dark brown. You can repeat this exactly today using a fire pit, a metal drum, or even a propane torch. Though honestly, staying faithful to the ember method produces a more controlled finish. Once the surface darkens, craftsmen traditionally brushed off the loose carbon, polished the fibres, and then oiled the timber with animal fat, linseed oil, or pine tar. This locked the heat-altered layer in place and created an almost armour-like outer shell. How anyone today can apply the method on real projects. Let's say you're building raised garden beds and you don't want chemicals leaching into the soil. Heat treat your boards by placing them about 4 inches above a bed of hot coals. Rotate each board until the entire surface is dark. So, you just brush it down and apply raw linseed oil. You know those boards will outlast untreated lumber several times over. Or, well, consider fence posts. If you char only the bottom third, the section that contacts soil, you create a barrier that moisture cannot easily penetrate. This is exactly what Viking builders did, and archaeological excavations, time and again, confirm that charred posts survive dramatically longer than raw ones. Or take something as simple as outdoor furniture. A controlled char followed by an oil finish produces not only a beautiful matte texture, but a surface that repels water naturally without synthetic coatings. Why this method deserves a comeback in modern building and homesteading. It's sustainable, cheap, and based on principles that have already proven themselves across more than 1,000 years. When kept dry, raw wood can last ages, but the moment moisture and microorganisms enter the picture, the countdown begins. Heat-treating delays that count down so dramatically that, many cultures actually considered treated timber almost immortal. In a world where people want alternatives to chemical preservatives, this method, it solves the problem using knowledge that predates industrialization by centuries. And from a historical perspective, this technique connects us directly to the craftsmen who built ships, barns, temples, and fortifications that stood strong long before the modern world. Why it still matters for history lovers and survival-minded builders. Knowing how ancient builders protected their resources teaches us more than just a technique. It shows how deeply they studied their environment. They didn't guess. They experimented. They preserved. And they passed this knowledge down because it worked. If the grid ever went down tomorrow, or if you simply prefer building the old way, mastering heat-treated wood gives you a real practical skill that keeps your structures standing longer with fewer resources. Thank you for watching Thermal Vault. If you want more deep-dive history, forgotten engineering, and practical techniques that still outperform modern shortcuts, make sure you subscribe and share this video so more enthusiasts can join us.